Hello everyone, we are group number 2 and today we are going to talk about the three equation model. So first I want to talk about the content and what in this topic. The first is the main point of the paper is that I'm going to present about it and the summary, and second is Ngawang. She's going to answer how does the paper fit with the material we have covered in the model. And third is Kuchung. He's going to talk about the analysis differ from what was presented in the lecture. And furthermore, Tak Bong Hill and Nguyen Linh Giang is going to talk about the strength and weaknesses of the models, and we're going to talk about other people on this topic, and Long is the difference from other papers. And Bang is gonna say about the possible exam question and the conclusion. So next is a summary. As we know that in the modern monetary macroeconomic is based on three equation new Keynesian model, in which there include is the EX curve, the second is Philip curve, and the interest rate based monetary policy, ESPC and MR, which is according to the new Keynesian science monetary policy by Calenda published in 1999. So as we can see here is the equation of ES, which is E stands for the real income positive function to the autonomous expenditure A, and R is the interest rate with a negative function. And second is a Philip curve. In this equation, we can see that the P is the rate of inflation and EA is equilibrium output. And with the two ES equation and the Philip curve, we combine to have the central bank loss function. As you can see, this is the combination of the two ES equation and Philip curve. As you can see here is the OX and OE model. Here is a P1 with I1 and P0 with P0, which stands for the inflation from target in either duration or process in loss of utility for the central bank. The last structure of the model explains why it's P1 and I1 that feature in the central bank loss function. By choosing R0, the central bank determines E1 and E1 in turn of the determinant of P1. Next is Ngawang. She's gonna talk about.
In the next, I will talk about the comparative case study with the material of the lectures. And the first one, I want to talk about the limitation of the classical models and ISLM. In the first one, in the case study, they talked about that the classical model in treating wage and price isolated model isolated that considers central bank and have the best impact to the economy. And the next, it has the looking the it creates the explanations and current view of monetary sectors that make people that have to find and understand that economic process that change from the equilibrium to the others that becoming an exercise in the mechanical curve shiftings. And that's why the new Keynesian has thrown out the three new equation macroeconomics. You have a lot of advantage here. The first one, it knows the strength of the computing approach preceded, like ISLM with the empirical theory and dynamic general equilibrium. And the next one is a semi-rigorous understanding about how economics works in the current view will make people have a wider understanding and assumptions about the economic process with the policymaker. And they make useful for explaining for optimizing behavior of central bank. In the next one, I want to mention about the three model here. In the first one about the IS curve, or based on investment and saving. here it determines the difference between the actual and potential output. With the important variable here is the real interest rate will be calculated by the expected interest rate minus the natural rate. In the real interest rate, we just impact the output in the next period because it needs to take time for the inflation for interest rate change to fit through the expenditure curve. And the next one is about the PC curve or based on agreed supplies. It will determine the output gap and the expected inflation by the people predicted in the futures. And the last one is about the agreed demand policy. It is based for the central bank behavior here. It determined as the natural rate of interest and output gap. Actually, the central bank can set the natural rate if interest in the short term, but because of the expected inflations in the short term, so central bank being assumed to be able to control the real interest indirectly. In the three model here have the same characteristic that it has in the three equation endogenous, and it depends on each other's, and any shocks of the economic will affect to the curve of the three equation here. And the next one I want to mention is about one of example of the economic shock here. It is a positively supply shock that will increase the equivalent output from YE to new point. The first consequence of this supply shock will decrease the inflation target to 0. That move from A to B. And the first actions of the central bank is need to find out the optimum buy point because of the decrease in the inflation. Therefore, the period curve also seek to the right to achieve the inflation target. And the first action of the central bank will first forecast the PC curve contrast to the mid period and move to the C point. And the next action is decrease the interest rate as the chart above. And therefore, the RMI team will move to a new curve that will achieve the inflation target to 2%. And next, Joe will present about presentation.
My presentation will focus about the differences between the CF3 equation model and the new consensus model. As we can see, all two kinds of model have three equations that lead to the main goal is to have central bank to get closer to the inflation target. But as we can see, the contribution for each equation from two model is quite different. So I will, to more specific, I will go to each one. Next slide. With the IS curve of the re-equation model, this equation is determined by the output gap by taking the current output gap and minus by and minus the equilibrium output level, and and this one is also determined by the last period inflation via which one is P0, and in the Philip curve, this one is also determined by the output, but the difference here is the output in the Philip curve is determined by is determined by the actual output and the potential output, and it's also be determined by the expected inflation. And next one is the Philip curve. The Philip curve of the CF3 equation. We talk about the IS curve. The IS curve here is determined by the current output, the interest rate at period 0, and the stabilizing interest rate, which is interest rate at the equilibrium of output. And in the new consensus, is determined by the difference between actual potential output and the expected interest rate and the output gap period, which causes the price are sticky and expected output. And after we combine two elements in two models, we have in the CF we have the central bank loss function, which is the output gap square and the and the P1 minus inflation target square. And in the new consensus, we have the Taylor rule, which is determined by the natural interest rate and the expected inflation. So this is how the new consensus and the three models work in theoretical. As you can see that in the as you can see. In the new consensus, the equilibrium output and the inflation target is determined at this equilibrium point, and it was determined by the investment and saving monetary policy and the Philip curve. But in this one, this tells the central bank how to adjust the interest rate relative to the stabilizing the interest rate in response to a deviation inflation from its target. By setting the output, the central bank's problem in this way have to identify the key role of forecasting. The central bank must forecast the Philip curve in the next period and the IS curve. Although the central bank observes the shock in period 0 and they calculate its impact on current output and next period inflation. And then we can have the equilibrium by combination of three elements, which is the IS, the Philip curve, and the bank loss function.
My name is Xiu, and I will talk about the strength of the paper. About the theory approach, there are four strengths that I can conclude from the paper. The first one is the IS. The paper shows the IS DCMR curve can be reached in a way that retain the tractabilities of policy friendliness of the our approach with the institutional behavior of contemporary policy making in the new approach, and therefore they can open a way to for more advanced literature. Secondly, the paper contribute to develop a version of three equations that can be taught to the undergraduate student and can be exploited to a broad range of policy issues, including credit and banking crisis and the oil and commodity price shock. Thirdly, the papers focus on the forward-looking central bank in a monetary and Taylor rule, and finally, it will provide a key relationship and therefore can be able to verify the assumption of behavior of central bank. Move to the graphical approach. the strength of graphical approach is also have the four strengths. The first one is the graphical approach is useful in bringing out the economic intuition at the heart of the model. Secondly, the ISTC MR graphical analysis is also particularly useful in explaining the optimizing behavior of the central bank. Moreover, it allows students to work through the forecasting exercise and to follow the adjustment process as the monetary policy is implemented. Finally, it will help students to thinking and acting like a policy maker. In the theory discussion, the MR and AD curve is shown graphically in Philip rather than the IS diagrams because of its natural monetary rule is to identify the best central bank policy in response to any shock, and both central bank preference is based on the indifferent curve, apart from loose circle and ellipse, and the trade-off effects between output and the inflation rate in the Philip curve. Since the central bank have calculated its own design output, it is straightforward to go to the IS diagram in the forecasting Philip curve to set out the level of interest rate and therefore can achieve the level of aggregate demand. The final part I will want to talk about is the empirical analysis from the economic combination from August 2007, and the combination of August 2007 posed a good test on macro level, a macro model at intermediate level, and this highlights the debate among central banks all around the world whether if the interest rate would be increased or reduced in the case of crisis and oil shock. And also, in the example shown, in the example shown, for both cases, the outcome of both cases is lower the output and higher the inflation rate. The paper also come to a conclusion that the initial consequence economics of oil shock and crisis provide low output and high inflation. Moreover, in a response to that case, the price and in response to eliminating interest rate and inflation rate and a rise in inflation would have to be observed. And the next part, Zhang will talk about the weakness of the paper.
I would like to continue with our presentations with the limitation of the effectiveness of the scientific demand. And so, according to Gordon in 2015, who criticized the work of Carlin in 2009, it had highlighted that it depends on restrictive and sometimes unrealistic assumptions. And when one modifies these assumptions, the scope of the demand side will increase significantly. And I will talk about the two modifications, which are the neighborhood models, the short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment, the central bank ability to control the economy through interest rate policy. And in the absence of central bank interventions, the wage bargaining behavior assumes that a positive or negative deviation from neighborhood can increase or decrease the real wage demands, which then costs to
to the inflationary or deflationary respectively. Next slide, please. And if they have a characteristic due to these qualifications of the long-term unemployment, any increase in the actual unemployment rate will automatically lead to the partial increase in the NIRUs and vice versa. And the second modifications will is during the recessions when high-risk premium combines with pessimistic expectations can disrupt the transmission mechanism. If banks do not pass on lower costs of induced in a central bank's cut on interest rate, and in addition, the pessimistic expectations from investor also reduce the investment demand. At that time, if the interest rate is nearly or already zero, the interest rate policy show the lost ability of stabilizing the economies. And the next part will represent GDP. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to present about other related literature to the topic. So I chose these three articles which are closely related to the original paper, and all these three literatures are also cited in the paper, so they are really closely related. Next slide, please. So because due to limited time, I will focus on two articles. The first article is the three equation of new Keynesian model, and about this article is focused more on the graphical exposition. So according to the author, the new graphical ISPC and ERA model is a simple version of the economy used by central bank. And the next part, they made a comparison between the new three equation model and the baseline model, and they found that the difference lies in the lag structure in the IS and Philip curve model in the equation. And they also found an advantage of using the new three equation model is that it is very useful in explaining the optimizing behavior of the central bank. And lastly, they mentioned about the implication of the model, and they highlight that the analytical and advantage of the model is that it can be used to analyze the consequence of a wide range of macroeconomic shocks to identify the structural determinants of the coefficients of a Taylor type interest rate rule. Next slide, please. Yeah, and a second article is the Science of Monetary Policy, a new Keynesian perspective. So in this article, they have three main sections. The first one is they also point out the problem lies in the simple theoretical model before the three equation models, and they point out the problems and the usefulness of the new three equation models. Also, they also add real-world complications like macroeconomic shocks to point out how advantageous it is to use the new three equation, new Keynesian models. And lastly, they also compare between theory and practical policy making nowadays. So that's the end of my presentation. Next part, Long is going to present.
I'm with Long, and my part is to compare the difference between the original paper with the other paper. So first I compare the original paper with the three equation new Keynesian model and graphical exposition. We can see that there are two difference between these two papers. In the original paper, it's setting out a simple version of the three equation model and a set role play by friction in the economy, while on other paper is still graphical approach and a set structural characteristic of total supply and demand. Um, the another paper that I compared with the original paper, they both support new model, but there are some difference between them. The original paper support new graphical ESPC MR model and a set problem of hierarchical model, while the other one is also support new model, but the difference happen in the structure and the structure and the organizing of the discussion. First, they lay out the formal policy problem. They derive the optimal policy rule in the absence of commitment. They turn to the case with commitment in section 4. And the last one is consider a number of practical problems that complicate policy making.
So we have many theory information about, then I will have some possible exam questions. And of course the answer for you to apply into reality. First is the model not function of bank. So we have the equation here. Then we must answer the three solutions. First is beta equals 1, beta is smaller than 1, and beta is greater than 1. Next slide, please. So I have the three diagram that answer for the question. In the first case, when beta equals 1 independent point, we have the inflation target and output equilibrium is a perfect balance at the center of an indifferent circle. And either second concept that the beta is greater than 1. It means that the central bank is inflation averse, which means that is strongly aware of inflation, and the shape of the circle is the ellipsoid shape, and in the final case that beta is smaller than 1, we have have a more vertical shape rather than horizontal. Next slide, please. And in the second question, we must be using the three equation model to give a detailed period by period description of the adjustment process of central bank where the economy is hit by a negative agreement demand shock, which is the credit risk in 2008, and a supply side shock because of rising in oil price. In two cases, I also have the answer for each case. That in the first case, the central bank must reduce the interest rate in order to guide the economy back to equilibrium point. That output at the target inflation by using a temporarily expansionary fiscal measure. And in the case of rising oil price, we must raising the interest rate in order to higher the import, to the spread by higher import bill. We must raise the interest rate. In conclusion, the using of three equation model is help us to access easier to the information, and not just use the equation model under shape of the homework, and we just put ourselves into under the central bank decision to make a decision with each concept. Thank you for listening.
Endogenous money. So can you explain to me?
I think as we learn this part, I think money try to have money in hand to make a loan. It depends on the willingness of the bank based on the risk and the demand of the customer.
Really?
I
What are you
think
talking about? Exogenous or endogenous? Because in the first part I hear that you mentioned about exogenous, but at the last sentence you mentioned about the risk customer that prevent bank to grant loan. So what is the idea? I think that the answer had a conflict idea with the first and the second part. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you hear him?
Yeah, yes, of course.
I think that's the limitations of this article because in that it claim in that reading that the money is endogenous, but have we learned in these modules that the money is exogenous, and we have just used our knowledge about this module to apply in this article to get your answers to the kids' questions.
Okay. Other question? Please.
From the reading of Goder in 2015, they suggest that when the two assumptions occurred, two modifications occurred, there are two ways to solve this problem, which are the tax deductions and the fiscal policy. But I have read another article that fiscal policy following the new consensus model is not useful anymore, because when the interest rate is nearly zero or already zero, we cannot change the interest rate anymore. So at the time, we have to use another tool to solve this problem.
Five. I have one question for Anh Vũ. Okay, when you talk about two equation model, but can you explain to us some detail about each equation?
So the IS curve is very popular. Everyone knows. Can you show my slide? So as you can see, there's IS equation and the Philip curve, and with the ES equation and the Philip curve, and the combination of the two, which have resolved the central bank loss function. As you can see here, that here's YI and YE is in here, and also which is I1 here. And we used the P as inflation. So with the output and the inflation, we can calculate the policy that has been applied to the monetary system.
What does the bank do?
The bank will base on the output and the inflation rate.
It means that the central bank will loss function because they cannot impact directly. You mean that?
No, they still can impact directly to the economy, to the three equations.
Yes. Okay. Biết Ngọc Anh. For you. This slide, when you compare the case study with lecture materials, can you tell me what should central bank do in this study when you show IS and LM model have some limitation? Ngọc Anh. Ngọc Anh.
In the ISRM models, they saw that the central bank have the biggest role in the economy. That they think that the central bank, with the interest rate, can directly to impact the economy. But if without the fiscal policy, a fiscal policy don't have any rules in the economy. and the economic process in the this equilibrium to the others. That's why I want to mention it will become an exercise of mechanical curve systems. That's why the new Keynesian has around three equations that make people too easy to understand the economic works into the current mode and the policy maker actions.
Trần Quốc Trung. Okay, can you turn back the slide to the IS and from two model?
In this one.
Yes, that. So. Okay, I'm sorry. You can turn to the slide. Expected inflation equal the inflation target. The final slide you prepared.
This one.
Yeah. No. The final. Okay. Can you tell me the situation in this case? This case in stage of running up or downturn or in a normal?
For the
Yes.
This one.
Oh, right. Yes.
All that. So for this case with the three equation model, we first at the point is the inflation is at 4%, which is higher than 2% is the inflation target. The goal of the central bank is now how to put the economic at the position at area is to close the at the position best with the inflation target. So
What is the situation of the economy? Can you tell me? They are going up or downturn or normal? Understand my idea?
yeah, I understand.
If the real interest rate is 4%, what is the situation of economy in?
The economy
Yes.
is grow too fast and is out of control of the central bank. So the central bank job is they need to reduce the inflation to slower the economic growth.
What about the above diagram?
The above diagram they have the same the same goal with this diagram because the both one is they are focus on the how to help central bank to get closer to the inflation target. So when the inflation, the real inflation in the economy is too high, they need to fix it to make it back to the nature of interest rate.
Thank you. Linh Giang. Okay, can you tell me briefly about the mechanism, transmission mechanism of Nauru when the actual unemployment rate increase?
Can I use the chart?
Yeah.
So the curve is the trade-off between unemployment and the inflation. So and you have this kind of yeah. So this is the short run economy will turn to that point, and we call it the V. And at that time when the unemployment is lower like U1, but the inflation is higher, that they will naturally the economy will return to that point of long run Philip curve that we stop at C. At that point, the unemployment is still at the turn back to the start point, but the inflation will be higher. So that they had to have more tools to get the economy from the point C back to the beginning of the period.
Okay, hang on. When you compare frequency from the other paper, can you tell me the specific name of paper that you want to compare with original? Yeah. Because now you compare the differences from the original paper to other papers. Can you tell me the name?
The name of the paper is
Okay. You should substitute name, the name of the paper, and attach them on the slide. Okay. Understand? Understand my comment? Hoàng Anh. Last question. Please turn the slide to the possible exam question. When you have three weights when beta equal 1, larger than 1, and smaller than 1. Yes, exactly. Okay, what should central bank do in each case?
In the first case, since the inflation target and the output equilibrium is balanced when beta equal to 1, central bank need to hold the interest rate at the stable level and do literally nothing. And in the second case, when the beta greater than 1 is the inflation adverse, the central bank should lower the inflation target to lower than 1%, and the equilibrium output should be lower to nearly 2%. And in the final case, the central bank should smaller the inflation target in a specific number, and also the output equilibrium is the central bank is smaller too.
I think you should divide into two phrases. The first phrase, short run, what should central bank do, and the medium term and the long term, what should central bank do? This might have better answer. Okay, the last one. Move to the last slide. You prepare. Okay. In the case of rising in oil price, you said that AD is decrease. I agree with you. But the central bank we need to raise interest rate by less than its other YO. What does it mean? It means that central bank will increase or decrease interest rate in this case.
It will decrease the interest rate, but not over but not like not greater than as an place in than the target, I guess.
Okay, I will ask all of you. Is that true? Central bank should raise or increase interest rate if the AD decrease